Welcome to Courage Class. I'm Dr. Lindsay Kwok Hugh, and each week I'm in conversation with our community's changemakers and trailblazers. Together, we explore the unspoken parts of our Asian and Western experiences, finding strength, growth, and healing that reflect who we truly are, not who we've been told to be. I'm so glad you're here. Class is now in session. So we're at the close of season 1, and I want to take a moment to reflect on the lessons that have stayed with me the most. Lessons shaped by our guests, our stories, and the collective wisdom of our community. These are not just takeaways. I really want you guys to think of these as invitations. Invitations for how we live, how we heal, and how we move forward together. Invitation number 1, rest is not the opposite of ambition. In many Asian families, rest was never guaranteed. It was really a luxury that our elders could not afford because survival required endurance, and over time, productivity became our identity. Now, there is nothing wrong with taking pride in what we build, but denying ourselves rest really comes at a cost, and burnout is a failure. It's a signal. So in this season, I speak with my husband, Mike, who took a 6-month sabbatical after 14 years of nonstop hustle with the same company. Now, his story really invites us to reconsider what strength and success really mean. So as you listen, I want you to remember that rest is not the opposite of ambition. In fact, rest can actually fuel it. Let's take a listen.
Taking a sabbatical is a very personal decision. I don't think there's any perfect time to do it. People often, I think, view taking a sabbatical as being less ambitious or not willing to hustle. And I think that's actually not right. I don't think that's correct at all. I think that you can take a sabbatical, take time off, and reinvest in yourself, your family, your friends. And I think it can pay these huge dividends down the road. I also think that if you're able to focus, one of the things I've been able to focus on during the sabbatical is just some personal investments and other things. I think if you can do that when you can't do it, maybe when you're working because you're too busy, I think you can actually, in some cases, you can actually do quite well because you've had a chance to step back and reflect and slow down on things. Um, or read about things that you haven't been able to focus on. So I think that that's sort of another way to think about sabbaticals. And the one thing I would say, I don't think there's an optimal time to take a sabbatical, but I think that um, there is a difference between taking a sabbatical and not taking a sabbatical. And I would say whether you take a sabbatical when you're 30 or 40 or 50 or 60, if you never take a sabbatical and you never have that chance to sort of step back, except for, let's say, when you retire, right? When you're 65 or whatever, um, you, I think you end up missing a lot of things because, most of us, your health will degrade over time. And when you step back and just when we joke about this, when you retire, and it's the time when you probably have the money and time to travel around the world and do certain things. A lot of times people are not in the health to be able to do that travel.
That's
And so it's you think in your mind, you're like, oh, I want to do that when I retire. But when you're 70, you're not a spring chicken, right? It's if you're not able to go to certain places or do certain things, if you can't do that, I'm not saying you should stop and do it necessarily when you're 40, but you can enjoy a lot more things when you're 40 that you may not be able to do when you're 70. So it's being able to find the right time to take some rest is, I think, pretty important actually.
Invitation number 2, honoring elders while choosing our own path, especially when in conflict with what they want. Honoring elders, respect, and family loyalty are foundational values in our communities. Many of us achieved what we did because we carried our parents' dreams alongside our own. But when we silence our desires to meet the expectations of others that no longer fit, that devotion can quietly turn into harm. Now, choosing differently often feels heavier for us in our communities. There's guilt, there's fear, there's the weight of bringing others along. Now, Alice Tang, the executive director of Asia Week New York, offers a grounded, compassionate strategy for navigating this tension, how to honor our parents while still choosing a life that is fully yours.
I care about my parents and that I want them to know that I'm okay. I don't want them to worry, and even for the longest time as I was doing my career, they didn't understand, quote unquote. And it wasn't until they actually stepped into they visited me in London, they stepped into the Tate. Because I didn't really grow up in my family unit going to museums. It was more through like public school that I learned it all. But so they know about museums, but they don't engage in it in their lives as much. But when they did come to visit me and they looked around, they're like, oh, this is like real. This is what people do. And at the end of the day, they want to make sure, A, I am happy, I'm fulfilled, and I can, put a roof over my head and feed myself, right? Like those are the kind of things that they cared about. So in the sense, I feel if I can allay their fears, that matters to me.
Invitation number 3, developing your own voice inside of community. For generations, being quiet and humble kept us safe. It really protected the collective. It helped us to endure. But in Western systems that reward visibility and self-advocacy, silence can also erase us. So using your voice does not mean abandoning our values. It means expanding them. And Kyle Denman, the executive director of Arts Bridging the Gap and an awards-winning fashion designer, shares how community made it possible for him to live authentically. His story reminds us that we don't have to find and develop our voice alone. We find it in relationship. We find it in community. My last question as we wrap up this discussion is, for the person who is listening who might be struggling to pursue themselves, succumbing to other people's expectations, do you have any advice for that person?
I'd say there's a couple of things. One is find your people. I think that is such a game-changing thing. I'll be honest, even for Milan Fashion Week, have had so many struggles with logistics and this and that, and emotionally of, oh, can I do this? Should I do this? People are going to judge me. Some of the people who have stepped up the most are people I wouldn't have expected. I have several of my friends and, people who I know who have just said, well, why wouldn't we come to support you? Why wouldn't we do our best to make this opportunity happen? And that meant a lot to know that people have been in my corner, and maybe I'm not always looking in their direction all the time. And so that's my advice, is to find your people.
Invitation number 4, why culturally attuned mental health care is important for our community. Seeking help is a powerful first step to healing, but not all care is culturally attuned to you. And in our community where we are taught to defer to authority, it's really easy to assume that the therapist's interpretation is in fact the correct one. But Courage Class, I want you to remember, healing requires context. And Dr. Umal Kathawala, a licensed clinical therapist who specializes in culturally attuned care, names the blind spots of Western therapy models when applied to Asian clients, and what it looks like when care truly honors who we are. What might be some of the blind spots in a Western model of therapy when applied to Asian clients?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one blind spot could be pathologizing cultural practices that are actually strengths. So, for example, caring for elders may be labeled as poor boundaries in a traditional model, when maybe for some Asian clients, it's actually really fulfilling and can be reciprocal. And so without that cultural attunement, something that's actually a meaningful part of someone's life could be misunderstood as a problem. Or another blind spot could be something like missing a part of the problem. So if a client was coming in with work stress or problems with a manager and might be internalizing these negative beliefs about themselves or their ability to work well, someone could focus more on, okay, let's try to talk about how you can communicate with your manager and what can you do to be more effective in the workplace. But actually, if you dig in further, maybe these problems are better conceptualized as discrimination. And the work context is actually filled with these microaggressions. And it's not actually about being more interpersonally effective with the manager, but it's more conceptualizing these interactions in terms of microaggressions. And the ways that you would address these problems really is different depending on how you conceptualize them.
Wow, that was so powerful. Invitation number 5, mentorship as a leadership accelerant for women and girls. This is an issue near and dear to my heart. Asian women and girls remain profoundly underrepresented in leadership positions. And it's not because of a lack of ability, but a lack of access, sponsorship, and visibility. In conversation with leaders from Aspire, we explore mentorship as a force for expansion, one that accelerates possibility, breaks isolation, and reminds us that we were never meant to rise alone. Let's take a listen.
It can really transform their trajectory because suddenly they have this idea of like what is possible when you have a mentor, that there's this sense of like confidence, I would say. Like you have someone there to support you, even if you don't know what's going on, you have like the safe space that you can turn towards to a mentor. Like if you have something you need to ask about, talk about, vent about, you have this like one other person or a group of girls or a group of mentors that you have behind you that you know that if you go to them, they won't judge you. They'll guide you in a way that maybe they'll give you advice. They'll coach you into learning something more that you didn't really know beforehand. So it's like this network of expansion. Like you're expanding your network, right? But it's more than just that. It's more about gaining that experience that you wouldn't have without that mentorship. So I think that's really what's important when you have a mentor at such a young age, because it kind of evolves you in a way that's faster than your peers. It gets you faster into the real world.
What these lessons offered me was permission to honor my culture and to prioritize myself. And remaining conscious and choosing what we carry forward has been both a challenge for me personally and something that has been so rewarding. This season is an archive of courage and an invitation to all of you to keep going. See you next season. Thanks for joining me on this episode of Courage Class. I hope today's conversation gave you a little encouragement and inspiration. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And for extra motivation, tools, and behind-the-scenes content, sign up for my newsletter. I'd love to share with you more there. See you next time.